There's a place in Norway where the sun simply refuses to set for nearly 2 months straight, where mountains drop over 3,000 feet directly into water so still it looks like glass, and where villages the size of a single street have somehow produced some of the most extreme, most photographed landscapes on the entire planet. The fjords weren't built the way most landscapes were. They were carved, violently, by glaciers thick enough to crush solid rock, grinding valleys deeper than almost anything else on Earth, before retreating and letting the sea flood in behind them. What's left feels less like scenery, and more like standing inside a wound the Ice Age never quite closed. Norway's fjords, landscapes carved by ice. Tonight. We're going past the cruise ship photo stops everyone's already seen. We're climbing a switchback road with 11 hairpin turns carved directly into a mountainside, standing at the edge of a cliff, with nothing but 600 meters of empty air beneath our boots. Riding a train through scenery so dramatic that engineers rerouted an entire railway just to preserve the view. And following waterfalls named after sisters who, according to legend, are still dancing centuries later. By the time this ends, you'll understand why sailors who've crossed every ocean on Earth still say nothing quite compares to sailing into a Norwegian fjord for the first time. Geirangerfjord and the legendary Seven Sisters start in Geirangerfjord, and the scale hits you almost immediately. In a way photographs never quite manage to capture, sheer cliff walls rise directly out of water so deep and so still that on calm mornings, the mountains reflect perfectly upside down, doubling everything you're looking at. Farms cling to impossibly steep hillsides here, some abandoned decades ago, because the isolation eventually became too much even for people raised knowing nothing else. Their owners once relying on ropes and ladders just to reach their own front doors. Waterfalls pour directly off the cliffs on both sides, the most famous named the Seven Sisters, 7 separate streams cascading down together, and local legend claims they're 7 sisters who spend eternity dancing down the mountainside, teasing a lone waterfall on the opposite cliff, nicknamed the Sutor, who spends his own eternity trying and failing to court them. Locals will tell you this story with a completely straight face. And after watching the water actually move, twisting and catching light in a way that genuinely looks like movement, you start to understand why the story stuck. But that's only the beginning, because getting here often means driving the Trollstigen, the Troll's Ladder. A mountain road so steep and narrow that its 11 hairpin bends were considered one of the most ambitious engineering projects in Norway when construction finished in 1936. Buses inch around switchbacks so tight that oncoming traffic sometimes has to reverse to let them pass. Gravel dust rising off the roadside, waterfalls thundering just meters from the guardrail. At the summit, a viewing platform cantilevers out over the valley, and looking straight down, the road you just climbed appears as nothing more than a thin grey thread stitched impossibly across a nearly vertical mountainside. Trolls, according to Norwegian folklore, are said to turn to stone the instant sunlight touches them, which is exactly why this entire region is scattered with jagged, twisted rock formations that locals still half-jokingly point to as trolls caught out just a little too late, standing above the fjords at Preikestolen. Just when you think you've found the most dramatic viewpoint in the country, Norway pulls you somewhere even higher and considerably more exposed. Preikestolen, the Pulpit Rock, is a flat plateau of granite jutting out 604 meters directly above Lysefjord, with absolutely no railing anywhere along the edge. The hike up takes roughly 4 hours round trip, climbing through birch forest and exposed rock scrambles, and the payoff, standing right at the lip of that cliff with nothing but open air below your boots, produces a very specific kind of vertigo that photographs completely fail to translate. Sit here at sunrise, before the day trip crowds arrive by boat and bus, and you might have the entire ledge nearly to yourself, mist sometimes pooling in the fjord far below while you stand in full sunlight above it, an entire sea of cloud drifting silently beneath your feet. The Felm Railway and Norway's hidden folklore. There's one journey through this landscape that manages to feel almost impossibly cinematic without a single hike required. The Felm Railway climbs from sea level to nearly 900 meters in just under an hour, one of the steepest standard gauge railways on Earth, winding through 20 tunnels carved by hand using little more than picks, dynamite, and sheer persistence between 1923 and 1940. Partway up, the train stops specifically so passengers can step out and watch Kjosfossen waterfall thunder down beside the tracks. And on certain summer days, a figure in a red dress appears on the rocks beside the falls, a Hulder, a seductive forest spirit from Norwegian folklore said to lure travelers into the wilderness, performed live as a small, theatrical nod to a legend still told throughout these valleys. There's one type of building scattered quietly through these valleys that most visitors drive right past without realizing what they're looking at. Norway's stave churches, built almost entirely from wood using construction techniques borrowed from Viking shipbuilding, are among the oldest wooden structures still standing anywhere in Europe, some dating back to the 12th century. Ørn's Stave Church, tucked beside a fjord and reachable only by a short ferry crossing, features carved wooden panels blending Christian imagery with older Norse dragon and animal motifs, a visible seam where the old pre-Christian beliefs of the Viking Age never fully disappeared, just quietly folded themselves into the new religion arriving from the south. Step inside and the air smells distinctly of tar, the same pine tar once used to waterproof Viking longships, applied here for the exact same reason: to protect the dark wooden exterior against centuries of fjord rain and snow. Only around 28 of these original churches still survive today, and standing inside one, the low doorways forcing you to duck, dragon head carvings peering down from the roofline. It's easy to forget you're not actually standing inside something the Vikings themselves might have built. The midnight sun and the ancient stockfish tradition, what happens across this entire region during summer, is almost impossible to believe unless you've actually stayed awake through it. North of the Arctic Circle, particularly around the Lofoten Islands, the sun simply doesn't set at all for roughly 2 months, typically late May through late July. Locals adjust in ways visitors rarely expect: fishing at midnight, children playing outside at hours that would normally mean bedtime, entire towns operating on a kind of quiet, sunlit insomnia. There's one hidden detail about these fishing villages almost nobody notices unless they visit in the right season. Throughout Lofoten, especially in late winter and early spring, wooden racks called hell stand everywhere across the landscape, draped with thousands of whole cod hung out to dry in the cold Arctic air, a preservation method dating back over 1,000 years, referenced in Viking sagas, and still practiced today almost entirely unchanged. The smell carries for a surprising distance, sharp and briny, and once the fish, called stockfish, has dried for several months, roughly 70% of Norway's stockfish exports historically head to Italy, where it's rehydrated and turned into dishes like bakkel, a culinary connection between two countries that most people on either end have no idea even exists. The timeless beauty of Norway's fjords, so maybe what makes Norway's fjords unforgettable isn't really their size, or their scale, or even the sheer drop beneath the cliffs. Maybe it's standing somewhere that reminds you just how small you actually are, and somehow finding that feeling comforting instead of frightening. If this journey inspired you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which destination you're adding to your bucket list.